Now, in introducing Senator Franken, I'm tempted to quote a magazine reviewer who recently wrote, and this is a quote, "There's still only one idea that some political journalists can get through their heads. Al Franken is a senator, but he used to be a comedian." Well, that is a somewhat binary view of him, and so I have to ask, how could they possibly ignore that he can also hand draw a map of the United States, or that he's passionate about the Grateful Dead and once introduced the group at Radio City Music Hall? True story, I think it was in 1980. But tonight, in addition to being here as a second-term Democratic U.S. Senator from Minnesota, a veteran of Saturday Night Live, a deadhead, and a map artist, Al Franken is with us wearing another most important hat, author of a new book, Giant of the Senate. Many of you know that he's published a number of bestsellers already, in some cases using the written word to Truth Squad, some of the most outlandish proclamations from some of the most outlandish pundits, he would say blowhards, on the political right. And not surprising, humor in his hands proves to be a very effective political weapon. And he continues to use it in full effect in his new book, even as he tells a somewhat more sober story of his roots in Minnesota, of his meeting of his wife Franny during his first year in college, of his journey from SNL to 312 vote victory in the Senate, his first Senate race in 2008, and of his hard work to be taken seriously by his constituents and by fellow members of Congress at a time of growing partisanship and public disillusionment about the way our government operates, or doesn't. And by the way, I just want to say, I don't know if he can hear this, but I'm told that he and his wife, Franny, just celebrated their 42nd wedding anniversary this past weekend. Might be a political record. So congratulations to them both. Someone also wrote that Giant of the Senate, quote, fuses two disparate genres, polemical comedy and political memoir. And indeed, it is smart and funny, serious and irreverent, and surely one of the most genuine and entertaining political memoirs to date. Now, I am not going to join in the speculation as to whether Senator Franken has ambitions for higher office. In case you missed it, he was just listed among, several dozen possible contenders for the Democratic Party nomination in 2020. But I would say we should just all buy his book, just in case having another big bestseller might help him out now or down the road. But in all seriousness, I hope we can take a minute to thank Al Franken for being an outspoken guardian of our democratic values and our system of governments. He's done this as a senator through his unflinching questioning of Trump appointees and others appearing before Congress over the past 8 months, and through his efforts for 8 years literally 8 years, to reach across the aisle, not only befriending senators with whom he vigorously disagrees on the issues, but working extremely hard right at this very moment to reach bipartisan agreement on health care and other important issues. And while I promise not to speculate about his political future, I will say this: a lot of weirder things have happened in this country than a Jewish comedian becoming president of the United States. We're delighted that in conversation with Senator Franken tonight will be Jordan Hoffner, the CEO of Salon Media Group. Mr. Hoffner has had an extensive career in media, early on as writer and producer at NBC, and thereafter in executive positions at several big media companies. He's known throughout the industry as a pioneer in digital media, and he became head of Salon in 2016. Please join me in welcoming Senator Al Franken and Jordan Hoffner.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a bit of a cold, so my voice might seem a little raspy.
That's okay. We'll manage. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you for the welcome.
Yeah. I was going to thank him for coming.
I didn't mean to underappreciate your welcome. I just wanted to warn you that I might be raspy because I have a cold.
Okay. Well, I shook his hand earlier, so I'll have a cold in 48 hours. So anyway, thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
and it's good.
Can everyone hear? Okay, good.
Okay. And welcome to Salon Talks, and thank you, Lisa, for the intro. It's been a great year for us in this show, and we keep growing, and we keep getting better and better guests. So, once again. So I wanted to start off.
Who was your last guest?
Good question.
Never mind. Just keep
No,
going.
actually, it's going to come up in about 30 seconds, so
Okay.
I'm going to bring that up. So, but thank you.
Okay.
Prescient.
I just want to see if I'm better than the
We will
previous
determine.
guest. Okay.
We will determine that. So, I will tell you who the guest was. Now we'll just cut ahead. David Simon was on yesterday.
David Simon from
The Deuce and from The Wire, executive
Oh,
producer.
oh.
Okay, he was on. He was
I'd
on yesterday.
say that's very.
Yeah.
He's wonderful.
He is great. His The Wire, next to Saturday Night Live, was probably the best show on television.
Well, I think they're different genres of show.
Yeah, yeah,
And we're different genres of guest.
that's true. That's true.
So there. Everybody is equal.
That's true.
I know that's not true, but I'm a politician, so every life is of equal value, or something like that. Let's just go ahead.
We'll
with
go
the
ahead.
interview.
Okay. I was ready for the philosophy. I was. So, on a bit of a somber note, obviously, yesterday, on Sunday night, national tragedy. That's something that is happening over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And David Simon did comment on this on Salon Talks yesterday, and he mentioned something that I thought I'd like to start off with.
Okay.
That he said, I think Congress is the broken part of American government. It's the part that can be easily purchased. The price of a representative is fairly cheap by the standards of mass capital. What is your reaction to that?
Well, he's not completely wrong, that's for sure. But I think that, after Sandy Hook, which I couldn't have thought of just a more searing, brutal event, I thought we could have gotten meaningful gun laws in terms of background checks, in terms of assault weapons. And when we couldn't do that, and it was, the NRA does have a hold on one party, certainly. And I don't know if that is being bought or if it's about, because I don't think it's the NRA giving money to people. I think it's their ability to go after you if you're a Republican. Now, I do think there are areas like on climate where the money is really, when the Koch brothers, because of Citizens United, the Koch brothers are able to basically say, if you acknowledge there is climate change and that it's caused by man, and you're Republican, we'll immediately primary you, and we'll dump 10, 20, 30 million dollars against you. That's real. That's real. We are having a really hard time getting Republicans, even those who kind of were acknowledging that it exists. It was interesting. I'm on the Energy Committee, and I had a Trump nominee for the electricity position in the Energy Department, the grid. The guy does the grid, and I asked him, "Do you believe that there is climate change, and that's caused by man?" And he said, "I believe the climate is changing, but that the climate has always changed, and it will always change." And I went, Do you understand that there's a consensus among climate scientists that climate change is happening and it's caused by man? And he went, yes. And it was his way of signaling, I'm not crazy. Because the first thing was something he had to say. It was like literally now they have to say that. They always go, well, we don't know, the extent to which man causes it. We know it's changing, but it's always changing.
Right.
And, it's the next iteration of this is, we do acknowledge it gets cooler at night. But scientists don't know exactly why. There's no
plausible
northern
explanation.
temperate climates does get colder in the winter, but some scientists say it's because the Earth tilts. But we're not certain about that in the Trump second term here. So
Second term. Okay.
no, I know. Boy, did I bum you out.
Yeah.
I was saying how bad it would get, that they wouldn't acknowledge. Never mind.
But are we?
The point is, though, is that, this was another one of these tragic events. And, I remember when Sandy Hook happened, and I was, Minnesota is a state where people hunt and people like guns, and I was gonna immediately when Dianne Feinstein came out with her assault weapons ban, I said, well, I'm gonna co-sponsor that, and one of my team said, well, maybe Minnesota, and I went, how am I going to feel the next time this happens? We have to do this. And now the next time it happens, and the next time it happens, and the next time it happens, and we are now, I don't know what it's going to take. I mean, this was unbelievably horrific. I can't imagine what it's like. What those people will be traumatized forever. The 59 dead. Yeah. I think there's some, as many in critical condition. I don't. We can't. We have to get rid of assault weapons, and we won't be able to, because all we'll be able to do is say and we're not going to be able to even do that. We're not going to be able to say no more assault weapons being bought. And this thing that converts your semi-automatic to an automatic, I think this guy got that somehow. I don't think it's legal in Nevada, so I don't know what we do. I don't know what we do, but it is sad, and it was sad. That was the day when even the background checks after Sandy Hook didn't pass. That was one of the most depressing days for me.
Yeah, and up right now is silencers, which imagine a silencer.
I
being
cannot
employed
believe
in
that,
this.
and I certainly hope we can fight that.
Yeah, because when watching the videos of what happened, and you heard it, and so, but if you really couldn't hear it,
well, everyone's reaction would have been delayed. But as it was, this was. This sort of put a lie to the only answer to a bad man with a gun is a good man with a gun. That's
right.
A good guy. Anyway, just horrendous, and another awful event.
And you did bring it up in your book chapter called Bulletproof, and so it's something you've been working on for a while.
Yeah, I've been talking about this for a long time, but and we had a debate moment in I write about in one of my debates where I had at one point on the local NPR, Minnesota Public Radio, said that I don't think someone should be able to buy 100 handguns in one day.
Yeah, that's
right?
probably a good thing.
So we get in this debate, and my opponent, Norm Coleman, says, like, you're for limiting the number of guns people can own. And I hadn't remembered saying that because it didn't seem very remarkable to me that the idea that maybe if someone's buying 100 handguns in one day, maybe they might be selling them. So didn't quite know what he was talking about, but I remember I'd been talking, and so it was one of these classic arguments that I want to take people's guns away. And so I write about that, and I remember the next day, and I talked about I'd never gone hunting as a kid, but I went pheasant hunting, because the chairman of the ag committee, Colin Peterson, at the time was chair. Now he's ranking member. Invited me to go pheasant hunting, and this was when I was trying to get the nomination, and I felt like I got to go pheasant hunting with him, you know. And I've never been pheasant hunting. I've never shot a gun, so I bought a shotgun, and I went to a range and shot pigeons until I felt like until I started hitting them, and but I was really nervous because this was exactly about a year and a half after Cheney had shot his friend in the face, and Cheney had been a lifelong bird hunter, and I figure, you know, if he, who's a lifelong bird hunter, can shoot his friend in the face, isn't it kind of likely that I'm going to shoot the chairman of the ag committee in the face, and that would not help,
Yeah.
you know, me at all. So I was very careful about that. So the next day, this is like toward the end of this is like the second to last debate, and I get up in the morning to do my next event. And I go like, I'd mentioned going hunting and buying my shotgun. I go like, what if a member of the press asked me what make of shotgun I have, and I don't remember. I think it's a Remington, but I don't remember. What if it's and then I remember I couldn't even think of another make of a shotgun. And then I started panicking. I go like, could be a disaster, because there's going to be press at my events, and they might ask me what the make of my shotgun is. Do they have access to that information? So then I keep my shotgun in the closet in the guest room. And unloaded. And my mother-in-law was staying there. And so she's very hard of hearing. So I run up, and the door's closed. She was staying with us to the end of the lecture. I knock on the door. I go, Fran, are you decent? Fran, are you decent? And she's like, oh, you know, she comes out, and she's in a robe, and she said, I need my gun. And then I run in, your tie? No, my gun. And then I open the closet, and Franny had put my gun somewhere else. And so I can't find my gun. So now I'm frantically looking for my gun, and I'm late for the next appointment, and I just run out. Because I got to go. And my mother-in-law goes downstairs, and Franny's in the kitchen, and she goes up to Franny, goes, has it gotten that bad? That he has to take a gun out when he campaigns?
So yes.
So it's, yeah, well, It hasn't gotten that bad, but.
Well, now that you have the job, and you've had it for a while.
Yeah.
Is it everything you thought it was going to be?
Oh, yes. And more. I'm trying to remember what I thought it would be. I think I thought there'd be more debate. I think that's the main thing I thought. Like, most of the time you give a speech on the floor, you're just talking to nobody. Well, you're talking, actually there are floor staff there, and there's some pages, and there's the presiding officer. But there's no other senators usually. And that's why I remember when I first started to run, I went to Paul Wellstone's campaign manager, who was a friend of mine, and I asked him, this was in 2005 or 2006, so it's a couple years before I'm running, about preparing to run. He said the first thing you should do is give a speech, write a 5-minute speech with no jokes. And I went, why would you do that? Why would that? And he said, you should do that. So, but one of the reasons you should do that is because there's no one on the Senate floor to laugh.
Right.
So if you tell a joke while you're on the Senate floor, there's nothing. So it's just, you bombed, you died. So no, you can't tell jokes on the Senate floor. But basically that aspect of there is not as much back and forth on issues as I had hoped there'd be. That's a very, very basic, it's supposedly the most deliberative body in the world. Sometimes the Senate kitchen is more deliberative.
Right.
What should be, what vegetables should we have in our winter vegetable medley?
That's a big part of it. Well, you do describe it as a village of 100.
Well, there is that. There, you do have to get along with people, and you have to be collegial. And I'm pretty collegial. I like people normally, and I try to be collegial with people that I'm not close to or that I disagree with all the time. And so I've made a lot of friends on the Republican side. And I really obviously like my Democratic colleagues, but it's important to getting anything done. So I've gotten a lot of most stuff you get done is bipartisan. It has to be. I do write a chapter on Ted Cruz, and he is sort of the exception that proves the rule. Ted doesn't get much done. He's gotten he got the government closed once, but other than that, he doesn't really accomplish much. And he just sort of alienated people right away when he got there. So the line I use in the book to describe this, I said, this is what you should know about Ted Cruz. I probably like Ted Cruz more than most of my colleagues like Ted Cruz, and I hate Ted Cruz.
Got it.
And it's just because he's a toxic coworker.
Yeah.
Well, he's a guy who microwaves fish.
Yeah.
At lunch,
Yeah. All right, well, who do you like on the other side of the aisle? I mean,
I like a lot of
buds?
my colleagues. Lindsey Graham is is a good guy. He actually has come out saying there should be a price on carbon. So we're talking about, terrible on this last healthcare iteration, just awful, terrible. But he's funny. Remember when he was in the Republican primary race, the presidential race, and he was running about 15th out of 17. And I went up to him. One day I said, Lindsey, if I were voting in the Republican primaries, I'd vote for you. And he said, that's my problem.
Yeah.
And Lindsey, he's very funny. He's very funny. He's very, very smart, and he's good at certain things. And then this latest health care bill was terrible.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the health care bill. You're first single payer.
I've co-sponsored Bernie's bill. Now I know that we're not going to pass that this Congress.
Right.
And I also know that, here's the thing. Every other country in the world, they don't all do single payer. They do different ways of achieving this, but they do it. And they have as good or better health care outcomes, and there are all kinds of reasons for that. It's not just the health care system. And they spend less money than we do. So I'm on the health committee, and we had 2 weeks of really good hearings on stabilizing the individual markets, the exchanges, and the ACA. Very, very good bipartisan hearings with Lamar Alexander, the chair, and Patty Murray, the ranking member, leading this, and incredibly great witnesses. We had 5 insurance commissioners, 3 from Republican states, 2 from Democratic states, totally agreed that we needed to do the cost sharing. The reinsurance is a good idea. 5 governors, 3 from Republican states, 2 from Democratic states, totally agreed. Everybody agreed with everything. There were different approaches. We had another week of witnesses, and then bam, McConnell pulled the plug on that and said we had to vote. We're going to vote on Graham Cassidy, and then that fell apart. Now, fortunately, Lamar and Patty are back in talks, and I hope we need to do that. We need to do it very quickly, because these exchanges are setting their prices. The insurance companies are setting their prices, so we should have done that. This has been a waste of time, in a way, but we had to do it. So anyway, we're not going to get to single payer now. When I first started running, again, and that'll take us back to a debate. I had a debate with Norm Coleman. There was an independent in there too, but he said that we had the best healthcare system in the world. This is in 2008, and I said, well, we don't have a healthcare system. And he said we have the best healthcare system in the world because we have Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, and Mayo Clinic delivers as good a healthcare as anywhere in the world. That's true, but that's not a system. Right. We didn't have a system in the United States. If you were in Medicare or Medicaid, you were in the Canadian system. You're in single payer. If you were in the VA or in the military, you're in the British system, socialized medicine. If you get your health care from your employer, you're in the German system. That's how most Americans get it from their employer. If you don't have insurance, you're in the Cambodian system.
Right.
And the whole point of the ACA, we were not going to get the single payer. I would have gone for single payer then. Bernie would have. We were about 55 votes short. You needed 60.
Yeah.
We were 55 votes short. So we did ACA, which was trying to get people who were in the Cambodian system into some other system. And part of it is getting them. We expanded Medicaid, and part of it was an employer mandate, so hopefully more employers. People. And then also the exchanges, which was where you buy your own. It's a private plan, but where there are certain mechanisms to do that, where there are subsidies if you don't have enough money. It was put together the way it was put together for a reason. And that's when Trump won and they had both houses, I went like, this will be really interesting. Because they've been talking about this for 7.5, 8 years now, how to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. And I understand why we did what we did. I wonder what they're going to come up with. Because this will be really interesting. Because I've thought this through a lot, and I know why we came up with what we came up with. I wonder what they're going to do. And everything they came up with was unbelievably terrible. Everything they came up with had tens of millions of Americans losing their coverage.
Yeah.
And yet you had to pay more. And it took away your protections on pre-existing conditions.
Right.
And it was like really, really, really terrible. And like the American people, I'm co-chair of the Rural Health Caucus, and I go around Minnesota to hospitals, and we have roundtables and big community roundtables and stuff. People hated this thing. I've had people crying saying my mom gets her home health care through Medicaid, and I don't know what we're going to do because my husband and I both work. I don't know how we're going to keep her in the house. I don't know what we're going to do. And this is why there was like every iteration of this had somewhere, it topped out at like 20% approval. But there were like 12. As more they got to know about it, Graham Cassidy was so short-lived that it didn't get down to 12, but 17% seemed to be about where a lot of them were, and that is exactly the number of Americans who say they have seen a ghost. and I think there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, there might be. Yeah, yeah. So, coming from the technology world, platforms, when they're built,
Yeah.
are hard to break. And so this is a platform, basically, that's been built. But there can be
You're
fixed.
seeing the ACA as a platform? Okay.
It's a platform.
Excuse me.
There have been discussions about, or just statements, saying it'll collapse under its own weight.
Well,
If it's
there's
not
been
fixed.
attempts to sabotage it.
No marketing, things like that. Sure.
Yeah, like taking away the cost sharing, no
Yeah.
marketing, delaying, everything they've done has been toward that end. And I when Trump said nobody knew that this was complicated until I did.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, it's our leader.
Yes. Are there quick fixes to the ACA that you can point
Well,
to?
yeah, right now, I know what we need to do. We need to continue cost sharing, guarantee it for, we've been doing cost sharing. This is what the undermining was, or sabotage, which was keep saying, I'm going to take away the cost sharing. And what the cost sharing is the insurance companies paying for the most expensive, paying a certain part of what the most expensive people who are insured in the exchanges pay. So that's the government pays that that's part of the law, and he was going to take that out. And then there's reinsurance. We've done a reinsurance thing in Minnesota, which is essentially sort of the same kind of thing. Minnesota's put some money in, and it's going to drive down the cost by about 20%. So we're going to see lower premiums than we had last year in many cases.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what needed to happen, which is that people who had too much income to be subsidized were paying really exorbitant amounts for their insurance and were really pissed off about it and had a right to be. And so instead of addressing that, Trump, I guess, wanted just to make it worse. And but we're in these negotiations right now on how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But we know what elements need to be in it, and I could do it like that, but I'd have to get the Republican.
Yeah.
Lamar Alexander has his side to deal with, and Patty has her side
Right.
to deal with.
Right. Well.
And then there's the House.
Yeah. Right. Well, one of the things when you're sort of taking a step back on sort of general policy and Republican versus Democrat, one of the things that I picked up in the book was that Democrats, generally speaking, I'm paraphrasing, have the better ideas, but aren't so great at explaining them in a
Well,
way
I think we
that's-
have the better ideas because I'm a Democrat, so let me first say that.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of upfront about that. I'm a Democrat, and
Yeah.
so I think we have better ideas. But what I was basically saying is that we're not as good at messaging as they are. And what I say is that, as an example, is that all our bumper stickers end with "continued on next bumper sticker."
Right. But
And it's just like our stuff. We have more to explain sometimes.
on the-
because we believe in government and believe government working. Also, by the way, just to add to my bumper sticker on the ACA, we also need to have the mandate. That's part of the three-legged stool of healthcare, is that you can't penalize people for having pre-existing conditions. So you have to guarantee them that they get covered, even if they have pre-existing. That means everyone has to buy in, because if you can't be penalized for having a pre-existing condition, then you might as well wait till you have a pre-existing condition to get
Right.
health care, so you got to buy it. And the last thing is subsidies. That's the three-legged stool. So we have to enforce the mandates. And people don't like saying that because that's unpopular, but you have to get make sure that people are in there. You also have to advertise, and you also and Trump administration I think cut by 90% the 90%. Advertising, and I mean this is just nothing but sabotage. And then the navigators we need. So that's the end of the bumper sticker.
That's the end of the bumper sticker. But if you had to do a bumper sticker, that was one bumper sticker.
No, that was the continued on.
That's
I had the cost sharing and the reinsurance with one bumper sticker. Then it said continued on next bumper sticker. Let me explain this.
Yeah, I got it.
And then it was the mandate.
Yeah.
And the advertising.
Yeah.
And the navigators.
So you need two cars.
And then that was done. It was over. It was that neat, clean two long bumper stickers.
Right.
You have to get very close to the car.
Right.
To read them.
Well, on the other side of the aisle, the bumper sticker says "Make America Great Again." So the question is, if you could
That's really good.
create, yeah,
shoot.
But if you could create this succinct democratic message, whether it's healthcare or any policy, what is it? Because I think a lot of people are asking that right now.
Well, I like Paul Wellstone's "We all do better when we all do better."
That's a good one.
And I believe that. I grew up in the 1950s. My dad didn't finish high school. My mom didn't go to college. My dad was a printing salesman. My brother and I and my parents lived in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. And I considered myself the luckiest kid in the world because I was. I was growing up middle class, at the height of the middle class, in America, in Minnesota, in St. Louis Park. I just knew, the world was my oyster, that I could do anything. And most Americans felt that way then, and they don't feel that way now. Franny grew up very differently. When she was 18 months old, her father, a decorated World War II vet, died in a car accident, and her mom was widowed with 5 kids, and Franny wasn't the youngest. There was one 3-month-old, Bootsy, but they all made it. Now they barely, it was tough. They survived on Social Security survivor benefits. Sometimes there wasn't enough food in the house. Often there wasn't enough food in the house. They turned off the heat in the winter sometimes. This is in Maine, but they made it, and all 4 girls went to college on Pell Grants and scholarships. At that time, a full Pell Grant was about 80% of a public college education, and today it's like 35%. My brother-in-law went in the Coast Guard, became an electrical engineer. My mother-in-law, when Bootsy, the youngest, went to high school. My mother-in-law, who's still with us, she's 94. She got a $300 GI loan, went to the University of Maine. Then she got 3 more loans. She graduated, became an elementary school teacher. She taught Title I kids, so all her loans were forgiven. And every member of my wife's family became middle-class, productive members of our society because of the GI Bill. That's how Fran got my mother-in-law, who said, "This has gotten that bad." That's how she got her GI loans to go to college, Pell Grants, Coast Guard, Social Security survivor benefits. They tell you in this country to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and we all believe that. But first you got to have the boots.
Right.
And the government gave Franny's family the boots.
Right.
And that's what we're about. That's what Democrats are about.
Yep. So the middle class has been a big part of the discussion over the last week because the president's tax reform was released, or framework was released.
Yeah, I haven't studied entirely, but I'll bet you it's just great for the middle class.
Um, it has some squeezes in there, I think. But one thing that was interesting about it was not only that the cuts for the higher income folks, but a little look at the corporate tax, which was a proposed reduction from 35% to 20%.
Right. Well, that means they'll create more jobs.
Do you think that's the case?
Yeah, that's what happens when corporations pay less taxes.
Let me give a counter.
They give me an example. Randall Stevenson, the CEO of AT&T, recently said, "Well, we pay 35% corporate tax rate, and if you lower that to 20, think of all the jobs we'd create." And the thing is like in the years then I looked into this, and like from 2006 to like 2015, they paid actually an effective rate of 8%. And so imagine how many jobs they created during that period. A negative 80,000.
Yeah.
But they used their profits to buy their stock back, so Randall Stevenson could take advantage of some of his stock options, and to the tune of $165 million.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm so encouraged.
Yep. Well, let me counter that for 1 second. Okay.
Okay, I want to hear this.
Okay. There are, according to the 2014 census, there's 4.8 million corporations in the United States.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, most corporations are individuals.
Yeah, and
I'm a corporation.
yeah, but there are a lot like ours. That's a smaller company. That
I agree. Smaller. I would like to see loopholes close on big corporate entities, and that people, small businesses, who that. I mean, right now you pay most our S corps or the where it flows through the what's give me the come on, this is Washington, a pass through.
Right.
And so you pay the individual, right?
Right.
But now it may be encouraged, if it goes to 20, you'd pay the corporate.
Yeah, I just looking at it, saying, okay, well, the wealthiest individuals pay the highest rates in general. So wouldn't the wealthiest corporations
do they
do that?
in general?
I mean, theoretically, in theory.
Okay, but theory isn't reality.
That's
is it?
true.
I don't want to argue with you here.
No. We're looking at smaller companies.
But you're
like,
wrong.
I could be wrong. It could be wrong. But I would look at it at a company that made $10 million in revenue and paid $1 million in taxes thereabouts. They could use some of that extra money to create jobs.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the reality, if you look at the reality, in fact, the same study I saw that it tracked these corporations, like 90 of these corporations that paid less than 20% in taxes, and they all were negative in job creation, and companies that had paid the higher tax had created 6% more jobs.
Yeah.
So the reality is very different from the theory.
Yeah.
Very often. I'm not saying. Look, I would like to see, small businesses be able to thrive, and I think right now you have, and I go around Minnesota and talk to small business people, and their complaint is they don't have the money for the lobbyists. They don't have the money for the high paid tax lawyer and the high paid accountant who can get them, who can take advantage of these loopholes that their lobbyists got them.
Right.
So but that's why any tax plan that you see has to be extremely detailed. and has to get rid. And what was produced, I really don't know what their plan is going to do. I do know that the plan will not help Donald Trump because he said it wouldn't.
Right. Well, we don't know. We have
That I know. At least I know one thing about it.
Right.
You see, because he said that wasn't going to help him.
Right.
So we know that
Okay.
because he said that.
So it's true.
And you,
Okay.
I don't want to belabor it.
All right. Well, we have some fine questions from the audience, so I thought we'd
Great.
break those out.
Great.
Okay. What should we do now? What avenues should we choose to effect change, and how do we keep sanity? Sorry, you okay?
Okay, almost that was almost the end of me.
Yeah. It's okay.
Okay, what should we do now? Okay, it continues.
What avenues should we choose to effect change, and how do we
Ah.
keep our sanity for the next 3.5
Oh, I
years?
see. You mean what should you as individuals do? Oh, that's good. You know, I believe in advocacy. I believe that if you're here and you are, you're probably you're probably interested in public policy and care a lot about something and maybe a number of things. It might be mental health. It might be climate change. It might be the air and water. It might be housing. I believe in people becoming advocates for things. And because when I'm in the Senate, we have advocates. You know, I have advocates from Minnesota come and visit me all the time. And they're important to me because they're telling me stuff that I didn't otherwise know. And they're also, you'll be surprised how quickly you can go from being a foot soldier in an advocacy group to being an officer and then to being a general. It's not, it matters. It matters. And, you know, there's obviously I don't know how many of you live in Washington, D.C., but you can, you know, local government is really important. And also Virginia and Maryland, Virginia isn't far away, and you can help during, like, you know, you can show up and go, like, hi, I'm from Virginia, and I'm knocking on your door, and I'm saying, no, you don't do that.
Yeah.
But you know, we need be active, be activists, but very often for a cause that you really, really believe in that can make a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next question. Since the results of the last election, how much has your legislative strategy changed?
Say that again.
Since the results of the last
right,
election,
right.
how much has your legislative strategy changed?
Oh, kind of completely. I mean, we don't control the agenda anymore. We don't control the committee hearings. You know, but I'll give you an example. I mean, it depends on on where you are. But because we're in the minority now, we've been fighting back these attempts at Trump care, these various iterations. It's been easier than I thought. I really honestly was interested in what they would come up with. And I really did think that they had been thinking about it. I mean, I did, and maybe I'm just wrong. You know, I thought they were going like, okay, now we want a private, the competitive marketplace for healthcare, and the way to do that is I can't think past that for them. But I thought they would have thought of something, right? But so I thought, well, this is going to be hard. You know, they're going to come up with something good, and then it's going to be hard. We're going to have to fight for, I'd love to fix the Affordable Care Act. We've been wanting to do that for 8 years, but they won't let us. They wouldn't do anything to improve it. So it became, our legislative agenda became fighting that. and we were successful mainly because they just didn't think anything that was anything but terrible. So there's that. Legislative agenda in I'll tell you something, like in the Energy Committee, there's actual stuff going on that I'm big on energy storage, which is a game changer. If you can store energy in vast quantities, you can make renewables baseload. You can make wind and solar baseload because you can store the wind blows more at night, but they use less electricity. But the sun shines during the day.
Right. Right.
Okay, this is science.
Is that true?
There's a consensus on this. There really is, honest. And my colleagues will acknowledge that. And so we had a hearing today on storage technology, and I thought it was a great hearing. And Lisa Murkowski called that hearing. I mean, that was great. And Lisa, who I like tremendously, I've been talking to her about because Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands were just flattened, that we're going to have to rebuild their grid. Well, why not make it a much more resilient grid? And why not make, and okay? Now, doesn't that sound like something that everyone should be able to get behind? I mean, why wouldn't you want the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico to have a grid where if the next hurricane happens, this doesn't happen again? And so we don't have to pay for rebuilding it again. And, and also they burn diesel fuel for electricity in Puerto Rico. Why not have solar? Did you know that people in the winter go down to Puerto Rico for sun?
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And they go to the Virgin Islands for sun, too. There's a lot of sun there.
Yeah. Well, if you do a grid,
and do
down there.
microgrids. So if
Microgrids.
one part of the island goes down, you're
Yep.
this is called distributed energy, so that you're in island mode. You can operate still, even though the part of the grid went down.
Well, one of the things that's been discussed about the grid has been North Korea, and what could happen in the atmosphere if a hydrogen bomb is detonated, and that scares a lot of people on the West Coast. So, are you scared about what's happening with North Korea?
I'm guessing you live on the West Coast.
I am.
Okay.
And I also bought a generator.
And I'm guessing it's in Northern California.
Yes.
Okay.
Dude.
You guys worry too much. If a hydrogen bomb goes off, that's really bad news on a whole front of things.
So
I mean, and the grid, that'll be bad.
Yeah.
But the millions and millions
Yeah.
and millions of people dying
That's bad too.
will be bad.
Do you think
as well.
antagonizing the guy who has the hydrogen bomb is a good idea on Twitter?
I don't think that the president has handled that as well as he could.
Well,
But that's all I'm going to say about that.
okay.
No, I mean, I some of the more, just the more upsetting. I'll use that. Some of the more upsetting moments of this presidency have been his remarks regarding North Korea, because I don't think that North Korea, I don't think Kim Jong-un sees it as his advantage to actually use a nuclear weapon. I think in his judgment, if he has one, that we will not attack him. And they've also had the ability to, with conventional weapons, to wipe out Seoul with artillery batteries for a long time. So he's really had, and I don't think there is. I think there's been a 0% chance of a nuclear exchange with North Korea until this president, and now I think there's a 1% chance or less. But the worst thing you want is just some misunderstanding, some miscalculation by somebody. And so the worst thing a president can do is add to that the chances of that kind of thing happening. And to me, the kinds of things that the president has been saying are kind of the only scenario in which something like this could possibly happen. I hope to God nothing like this happens, but I can't I don't understand why he's undercutting Tillerson. I don't understand why he's doing what he's doing. I don't understand him. And there have been a lot of aspects of things he's done and said that I've found very disturbing. But that stuff has been really upsetting from the standpoint of, I feel that he is an affront sometimes to the whole country in the way he conducts himself, and that to me that has been the worst.
Yeah. Well,
but get a fallout shelter with some storage. Get
right.
some storage.
Yeah.
Electric storage,
Yeah.
so you can keep your liquids cool.
Excellent. Well, one more question, and then it's 8 o'clock. So this comes actually from the West Coast. The question is, if you were to give a percentage, and if you leave Mike Pence out of this equation, so of the 100 sitting senators, how many have been to a Dead show before?
Do I have to leave Pence out? Because that doesn't change anything. I don't know. I know Pat Leahy has, and I know I have, but other than that, I don't know. I haven't, I've made it pretty well known to my colleagues that I'm a deadhead, and Pat has, but no one's come up and said, "Oh man, you remember that Nassau Coliseum, 1980, the Althea?" Or Sherrod Brown going, Al. I haven't heard colleagues come up to me and say they've seen Dead shows.
So 2% is a reasonable.
There must be somebody that I just haven't.
Well, we'll see. All right. Well,
Ben Sass.
Possible. Possible.
Jeff Flake.
All right.
Probably not. He's kind of religious. He's Mormon.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. He's a good guy. I like him.
All right. Well,
he grew up very different than I did. He grew up on a ranch that his father and his 4 brothers owned. It was like a TV series. When I was a kid. The big ranch,
Excellent. Well, I want to thank Senator Franken, and I want to thank the audience here and everybody who's watching. Politics and Prose, thank you very much. I promised I would get him out in time to see the Twins-Yankees playoff game tonight.
Yeah, I got to sign books, though.
Right.
So, excuse me. Why did I do that?
Thank you.
I love that I did that into the mic. I don't know why I did that. Listen, I will sign books, but I do want to get to this game, so I'm not gonna personalize. Here's what'll happen. I'll sign my name, and you'll get some fleeting but meaningful eye contact. Okay?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. That's a good trade.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.